I got 8 up. No, I'm talking about.
No. On the minute, it says 6 a.m.
I was like,
And the way the program works is you enter all the information, you build a packet, right? And that posts immediately to the site. So I don't know how the packet can say one thing.
You protest it too much. You did it right.
I thought it was much worse than that. I'm not here on the other.
So what you're saying is you were here at 6 a.m. this morning? No, I was afraid that I missed it. That's why I was here.
And then I'm sure I could swim after.
You were here for that.
Amanda, when you're ready, we're on.
okay, I'm ready. Let's bring our, May 9th, Bryant Parks and Rec meeting to order. 6 p.m. Call to order, we need approval of our minutes from our April, 2023 meeting.
I moved that to the minutes be accepted, right?
We have a second.
With one correction.
Oh, one correction, yeah.
With time.
Is that the 6 p.m.?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Director's report, your project update.
Sure, all right, so we are waiting on the surfacing guy to get here to do the pickleball tennis courts. All the rain, he is still in Dallas, last I heard.
I had people ask.
So, he was supposed to be here last week, I was supposed to be here this week, you're probably talking 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on the rain.
Oh, my retirement.
Yes, everybody's very excited, very, very excited about that. That's what we, there is one little issue, I'm not totally sure, Entergy was supposed to turn the power on. They gotta fix something on their side. Pipes, but
Everything else is finished, but the
surfacing and, I'm not, it's, engineering. The, aquatics roof, we're still waiting on the motors to get to, contractor Open Air in Canada. They are not there, they're supposed to be there this month. She said she thinks in June, and will be time to install the new motors. Signed to, and, Mills Playground, again, just kind of waiting on the contractor to get. I don't know if you saw, there's a Connex out there, with equipment in it. Should start this month, we're gonna do our very best to keep as much of the playground open as possible, but there will be days where it's gonna have to be closed. Any questions on any project?
Aquatics, install date for that, or finish date for that?
As soon as the motors are in, we'll get the tanks.
Yeah, I'm just curious how long.
Couple weeks, our goal, hopefully we can get them here in August. That's what, that's a time for us, but I doubt we get to choose them. Just,
Supposed to be Canada?
they're in, the motors go to, Canada.
Is that on 22's budget?
The first half of that was paid, and the deposit was paid in 22, and the, so it's supposed to be paid whenever the project's done.
I guess we'll let you know, 23. But it's already been earmarked for that.
It's already been earmarked. All right.
Those days, because that money hasn't been designated to go to that project.
Yeah. Same with the playground. All right. Well, I've got a few things here, I wanted to go over some, but the first thing, I wanted to look at is some of these pictures. I know it's not really nice to look at. But one of them is, this is obviously Ashley Park. And so I put those in there just kind of as a reminder. This was what Ashley Park looked like in 2019. It wasn't that long ago, that Ashley Park, we just demoed the whole thing except for the, which was batting cages. And then this other picture is from, the concession stand, it used to be a concession stand out on 40. And I keep this picture, because it reminds me of how far we've come. When I started, this was acceptable. Let's put the name Bryant Parks and Rec on that level. Yeah,
That's the problem.
that's a whole other,
Yeah, that's the problem with that picture.
And the reason I put that, I wanted you guys to see that, is that, when we think about who we are and what the residents of Bryant expect, you look at that and you go, how in the world did we get there? And so I kind of wanted to just give you a big picture of, how we got there, and, this is, again, this is first page here, or house number, but, parks capital improvement spending, sheet, you can see there, right, between 2008 and 2016, Bishop opened in '08, and this, it's not unusual, this is pretty common, around the country. Bonds are passed, you have major expansion, and your department, increases in responsibility so quickly that you just aren't able to take care of your older parks. And Bishop started to show signs of, trouble, in 16. And it was basically this thing we keep talking about. Our department only has operations budget. There's no budget for major repairs, capital improvements. So, 17, 18, you see there's a big bond. The bond that built Bishop was reissued, and voted on by the residents. Parks got $4.5 million. There was some money for fire stations and some money for Mariah Parkway. So we did a lot with that. We played a lot of catch up. And some of that money went to Ashley Park. I think $250,000 went to Ashley Park. The big lights there. And then between 2019 and 2022, you can see it's kind of different. We've got some bond money we used, the 14 months of A&P, money was used to build, this out here, did Alcoa 40 billion, and Ashley Park restrooms. Those are the three big projects out of that. Am I missing anything? And some of the money for Midland, A&P money went to Midland soccer lights. And then the rest, that lightest blue, came from city savings, okay? And this is what we've been doing since the bond money, A&P money has been spent. We asked council for city savings for these projects. And we'll look at that. So this is the other side of this.
On this side,
Yeah.
that's saying that's how much, that's what the cost was, around over two.
Yeah, all three of those combined over the last 3 years, we've spent a little over $2 million from those different sources. But you know, you think about, we did Spring Hill Park, what else did we do? City savings. Well, like Bills Park, Phase 2, the Bills Park Pavilion renovations, basically everything we did last year. Alcoa 40 is a little strange because it was approved in 2020, but then the price of steel went through the roof, and so we held off on that project and did some redesign. So the money was approved way before we finished it last year. So this other side is basically a broad breakdown of that, capital expense, list that we add to all the time, that we always look at in the budget process. It's got A-complex bathrooms on it, it's got, irrigation for Bishop, it's got lighting for Bishop, all the different things we want to do. And this was kind of the breakdown of what we were going to kind of take to council every year to ask for from city savings. And each kind of by park, right? What we were asking for. So, that's just a big picture view of that long, spreadsheet that you guys have seen before. Now, I think, so, if there was still a funding source, this is kind of what we do ask for. But then we get to this last, sheet, and, so basically, the only really point I'm trying to make here is that we are back where we were between '08 and '16. That's where we are. We've made a heck of a lot of progress. but there's no funding source to do any of this. And we already kind of seeing some things, you know, A-complex backstops, like gaping holes in them. That was in our list to do this year that we're not gonna ask for. And so I just wanted to, and the big key here is designated, right? That when we go ask for those funds, right, we're at a place right now as a city where those funds aren't there. We've gotta use those funds elsewhere in the city, which is fine. Where these other departments have an advantage is that issue, is it being designated? That they know year in and year out what they're gonna get for their projects, so they're able to plan ahead, they're able to prioritize. And so, again, my only point is, how do we get here? Basically, no money to repair and big upkeep. So any questions about that? That's, again, really, several sheets to make one point.
Yeah.
So, but like gaping holes in the backstop, so you're not gonna fix it, so then people are gonna come, they're not gonna wanna come back because you're not paying for stuff, so then.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the smaller items, I mean, if,
Right, and then
Yeah.
it's just, for instance.
for instance, like we met with a few engineering firms, city engineering, about replacing the full pack, getting prepared to replace it because it's gonna die soon. And hoping to have some plan together to replace it in 2024. But there's no money for that. When that pool pack goes down, the aquatic center shut down. And so it's things like, big things like that, I think would be obviously very noticeable to the community when we say, yeah, the aquatic center is shut down. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, I mean, it's just kind of.
But for the schools, the swim teams
So
won't
they're
be able
gonna
to
say, yeah.
Right,
swim or have
Yeah.
meets or
that's right.
kids.
And with lead times and that sort of thing,
That's right, like a year lead time.
yeah.
For the.
Minimum a year.
And we're working with, contractors that help us keep that thing alive. But there's a heater down on it right now. Can't get that fixed. This fall's gonna be, once it gets cool in there. And I guess, that's just, keep going back to this. We as a community decided to build this park, made a real significant. And we said something. And I know, nobody wants to see it fall apart, right? Everybody wants to take care of it. But without funding source.
We get somebody to look
Look at the basketball court.
Yeah.
Where it's coming up on the end, yeah, they came out, I believe, last week, and looked at it, they're supposed to be sending a potent diagnosis. I mean, that's something that, gosh, that started in 2017, and I think we've repaired them every 2 years since then. I mean, that people come out, they say this is gonna fix it this time, and it fixes it for, 6 to 12 months, and then they start coming up again. So somewhere along the way, moisture got underneath that cord, and it just they can't. No one can completely get it out. So
I mean, that's another thing, like Renee was just talking, that people are gonna start noticing, and then we'll start losing money on tournaments and other big revenue.
yeah, fortunately, it's off the playing surface right now, but we still hear it from people that are here for tournaments. Like, this is a really nice facility, but your court is warped over here in the corner. So.
Yeah, we've done several things, did some plumbing on the other side of that wall. We thought maybe the plumbing we fixed something, we've done several things.
We've had different engineers out there.
Could be that
Yeah,
the ground is so
yeah.
wet here, that it somehow seeps up,
Is this like flood?
yeah. And it is wet back there.
Recent group that came and looked at it said that, you know, basketball courts, they have a spongy surface that they put underneath them as well that helps with, and they said they think that surface got moisture in it, and we've never just completely removed the entire court. And I mean, they tried to do that in pieces, but unfortunately, without taking the whole thing up and rebuilding, which you're talking about building a whole new, you know, you do that, like, but they're afraid that, what they said was just doing it in pieces, that moisture is just,
Spreading out.
it's moving. You know, we may dry this area, but then 6 months later, that moisture makes its way back over, so, but
Is it added moisture each time, or is it?
they feel like it's already there. I mean, because we've done a lot of things, like Chris said, with redirecting plumbing and doing different things on the back end of the facility to try to keep, you know, in the beginning, there was the assumption somehow or other water's getting underneath there, but no one's been able to prove, like, how is water getting underneath there. So like I said, the most recent group that looked at it said they think that that's just moisture that is
Water table?
somewhere along the way it got there, and yeah, it's getting it out completely is, I mean, there was one, we took half of court one up and had fans on it for like 3 weeks trying to dry it all out, you know. But I mean, it's, you know, short term, I mean, it's on the, whatever direction this is, of the building, the west side of the, yeah. It's always there, so I mean, it's right now, it's court one and court three. Court three is a lot worse than one is, but, yeah, it's off the playing surface, we'll cut it up, we'll relay it, and, you know, patch it again, and it'll last the whole thing. I mean, it would, you're talking about having to,
If you lay a new court down, does that take care of the moisture, or is that gonna be in that court too?
I think you
I
have to
mean, if you
redo
lay,
the
if
whole
you
court.
you have to rebuild the entire thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
but
even
you
know.
have to figure out where the moisture's coming from when you do that.
You gotta stop the source.
Yeah.
The ultimate fix is, in order to get on what that cost would be to rebuild a new gym there, I mean,
I was curious as what the ultimate fix is. I mean, I understand there's money issues. What's the solution?
we haven't gotten, I mean,
Yeah.
no, as far as, yeah, I mean,
Not one.
no one has, and we've had multiple companies come in and look at it, and no one's truly given us a full answer yet on
We've
how
done
it's
what
all.
they told us to do.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
Non-qual when they built it.
What,
Yeah.
no, I will
That's
say,
back to what Mayor said.
I will say it did start shortly after, because the first time we repaired it, the FEMA paid for it. Because that's how I knew the date of when it started. The first time it happened was that massive flood we had in 2017. It showed up about 2 months after that. So I mean, more than likely, I mean, it was decided that flood was the beginning of it, and maybe moisture got in at that point and they'd never be able to get it out, but.
Do we replace
so
that?
the moisture's still getting into it?
So that,
We've looked at everything. There's no,
I don't think it is still getting in anywhere, because there's nowhere that we can find on the exterior of the building that shows that. So, and they cut up portions of the floor and gone down and tested moisture, and I mean, that's why we were really confident that last year, the year before, I think it was the year before, that the last time we had it cut open and fixed, that, oh, well, it's solved this time, we got it, you know. Now,
When FEMA's paid for it, did we replace all the courts, or did we just patch?
no, it was just patched, it was still
So there's a chance that the moisture
Yeah.
was still there from.
it could have, yeah.
That's to me like it's a water table issue. It's probably just gonna be section.
I mean, that would make sense. I know that there are issues on the, pool side with, you know, there's different when we drained it. We had to be careful about how we drained it because of the water table there, so.
Right.
And you're talking about the same area, so it very well could be.
All right, that's all I gotta say, unless you get any questions?
So, how would this situation need to change? I think where we are right now, and what's the solution to provide some sort of reliable assistance sources designated funding? Is that just changing the way the city does the budgeting, or is it a system issue, or how do we get out of this?
Yeah, well, y'all presented a really strong argument at council last month. You know, I think, since I've been Parks Director, every year, there's been, money that, we've taken into savings, right? Every year, at the end of the budget, there's money that we kind of underestimate our tax revenue and as much, right? So there's always this gap of money that gets put back in the savings. So if that was still happening, then it could be a system issue where council could say, going into the next budget year, we're gonna give you this money out of savings. Does that make sense? Where in the past, they just said, give us your list, we'll may or may not do it. They can change that system, but where we are now financially in the city is there's no more gap in the savings. So it is an issue of there's not enough revenue to cover this kind of hit.
How does that affect, we've spent a lot of time in the last 18 months on this strategic plan. One of the concerns has always been in the back of my mind are issues like this. It seems to me we need to get funding to bring those up to standard before we start taking on even more projects. I mean, I'd like to see the parks expand all of them. It seems to me that once we rest like the issue you brought up here, I would be very skeptical about proceeding too far. Getting more liability that we're just gonna have to.
I agree. The strategic plan will have two different, they're crunching the numbers right now. That's where they are. We are in that process. So they came and did a audit of our entire park system. So that's one of the numbers they're gonna give us, is if you wanna keep your parks nice, no expansion, just keep what you have nice, they're gonna tell us. Yeah, based on the national average and your growth, right, what you should expect in the next 20 years of growth, this is what you're gonna need to spend on your parks just to keep what you have nice. And then they'll also have a breakdown of cost estimates for any expansion. So both of those numbers will be in that plan, and so it won't be difficult then for us as a leadership with you guys and then council. Cost is gonna be, and how, what's the strategy to.
For whatever this is worth, it's, I view that people expect parks, instead of what we have now to be, we need to make those first class first before we start spreading limited resources over even more parks. What I hear about are just little things, all cosmetic things that people see every day. They don't understand the waters, report and that kind of thing. But I'd like to see us really make sure that we are in tip-top shape with everything we have now before we get too far down the road. That's a problem.
Really good pulse. That's the same thing we hear.
So with the budget we have right now, what are we not able to do are we able to do what we normally do by this May this year with keeping up?
No, I mean, we had a list of requests, capital improvement requests that, we were gonna bring to council this year, but we didn't have money for it. Not that council wouldn't love to give us the money for it.
Right.
It's just not there. Okay, simple. Irrigation system
No, I'm talking about just like day-to-day stuff, not
Oh,
future
not
capital
big,
stuff.
yeah, not big.
Day-to-day, no, I know we're not there.
Yeah, I mean, but we operate extremely lean, but there are things that we're asked, like, here's a couple illustrations, you guys heard me talk about the sound system, in the senior adult center, is a simple, wouldn't be that big of a project, but we just don't have the money for it. Sound is in the front, speakers in the front, so it's really loud, people in the front. Go back in here, that kind of thing. The flooring, the Boys and Girls Club and the Senior Adult Center needs to soon. Upgrading the lighting to LED. Aren't huge, that's not something we would necessarily, if we had a more robust budget, we could just put those in there. But they turn into things that we. Keith, you're more.
I think that, not necessarily this stuff has been cut from the budget, but I think with the situation we're currently in, we are just making decisions differently. For example, the dugouts and the backstops out here, I mean, they need to be washed. They need to be pressure washed. I mean, we need to hire, but that's not cheap to hire someone to come in and do it well and do it right. That's something we would normally do in another year. This year, we're going,
So we're already starting the trend of 2000.
Yeah, but here's an example, one of the things that we're looking at cutting is we have been replacing our, anchor sponsorship advertisements on the scoreboards. Like, we did half of them last year, because it's so expensive, we did half of them last year, half this year, because they were, they're old and faded. So that's one of the things that we have offered up as a cut, is not do that, because it's not, we're still gonna have nice ball fields and everything, but it's just something we were trying to do to make sure our anchor sponsors are really happy with what they're, that's one thing, that we were like, yeah, we don't have to do that this year. There are projects that we plan on doing that we're budgeting for, that we're offering up as cuts, just because.
yeah. And I think that, like Chris mentioned earlier, the heater on the pool pack, it went down right at the time, about a month ago, right at the time we went, it's about to be warm. Let's see if we can figure out, rather than just, in the past, something goes down the pool pack, you should know the other side of that, we immediately call somebody, whatever their quote, hey, we gotta get it fixed, do what you have to do. For that, we said, maybe we start looking at other options, maybe we can figure out something else, it's gonna be summertime, then April was a lot cooler than we anticipated, so, anybody that may have gone in and swam in the pool in the mornings, probably noticed it a lot colder in there a lot of those mornings, and that was because, I think in another year, we would have said, hey, we gotta get fixed. This year, it's like, we're having to be a little bit more.
The downfall is that it'll be starting to cool, time flies, and then what's the?
And if we don't figure out something about it, we tried to find some more cost-effective solutions, we haven't found anything yet. It's probably still gonna be we have to do to get it going again, but, so, I do think you see some decisions where you just have to, things are tight, so there's things we have to decide, is this an absolute need, or is this something that we just want?
If y'all put together some sort of a list, I'm sure you at least have it here, but on paper, that in the current environment, what are the priorities A, B, C, and the amounts for each one? And there's some things that obviously are gonna be more important, especially if they're revenue producing. We're losing money, revenue, but what really needs to be fixed, either because of the condition or the opportunity to generate revenue? I think that would be insightful, to kind of see a breakdown. Like I said, y'all probably kind of have that in your heads, but I think that would be helpful to me, maybe to the committee, but also I think ultimately to council. What's the things we gotta have what we want. And then it also shows, I think, a good faith effort on the parks, on the part of the Parks Department, not that you don't do that commonly, but, you know, we're trying to work with the city situation. Then communicating that also, I think, to the community proactively, especially in advance of this project we're gonna hear more about here, the initiative talked about, you know, this is why we need additional sources of funding. Help that.
There's, our budget right now, operations budget, mostly, part, the majority of that budget is payroll. We've been very, very fortunate not to have much turnover. We've had the same team together now for years. So, I mean, there wouldn't be a whole lot, if you did a pie chart of exactly what you're saying, the money we get for operations and where it goes, it's poured into this place. Because of it. Probably the only big chunk, or not even that big a chunk, would be our mowing contract that we contract out the, Hills Park, smaller parks, so our staff can focus on the revenue generating parks. But no, we can put that together real easily.
Well, and Mike has been working on just what? I mean, yeah, that's one of the things that John had asked Mike to be working on, to walk around with, is to prioritize those things. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, we're on the same page.
Thank you, very good discussion, appreciate y'all.
Parks capital budget. Oh, that's it.
That was, yeah, that was
Yeah.
that.
So you have any public comment? Old business? MP recommendation status?
Ready for another workshop? I guess, I don't know. We done another workshop?
Put it on the calendar, let's do this.
We're gonna get something moving on. Jordan,
I
you need
guess,
another workshop? What are we doing?
I think it's.
Are we going to
From what I
council?
understand, yeah, I think we're working on a date.
but is it too late at this point to even get it on the ballot for November?
No, I
No,
Not
it's
right.
It has to be done by June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, so, if it goes 31st, for it to be on November 1st.
Yeah,
But there was something that had to be done.
Marketing,
or something.
that's the biggest thing, I think, in my opinion, I talked to Chris about it, is the worry of it not passing the vote. I think that's the whole,
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest worries from council is, will it pass?
Spend the money
Yeah,
and
there's,
then,
you know, $21,000 to host election, plus whatever money goes into marketing.
So I think the previous discussion factors into this one. That's why getting the identification of the projects we need, so that we can make the case for what people are gonna get, not just what they're gonna pay. And I'm not sure there's enough wide public awareness of what the issues are. And I think if you communicate that to people, they can make the decision. But, I mean, I don't wanna pay more tax anymore than anybody else. But I also wanna have good facilities here, and I think that's gonna be absolutely critical to addressing the situation we just said. This is the opportunity. Already started that, and one of the things that was my first workshop I'd ever been involved, well, second. One of the things, I'll just say to Jordan and John, I would think would be good coming out of, going into that workshop, what is our objective here at this workshop today? And I felt like last week, we just kind of talked about the problem, and we adjourn. I mean, what is the desired outcome that we can get in this workshop? And just by virtue of the name of workshop, to me, I kind of have this vision in my head, okay, this is a roundtable discussion. Let's roll up our sleeves, let's identify these issues and be here till we hash it out. Because I don't think we're any further along than we were going into that workshop, and that was 2 weeks ago, week ago. Time is running out.
Yeah, I mean, I myself expected some type of a counter of, well, what is the plan? I mean,
Especially just for the meeting.
Yeah.
So we
I
kind of
mean,
go
and if
through.
there's not a plan, then say there's not, or
Then
what
let's
is
figure out a
it,
plan.
what's the mayor's plan, what's the council's wishes, I mean, you know. But it was,
Time's running out,
yeah,
and you get into
Because
summer
if we're
schedules and all that.
like, if we're saying things that is not the wishes of the council, then tell us that. I mean, you know, if that's not the direction y'all are going, if y'all have a different plan of what you want to do, tell us that. That's not, I mean, doesn't hurt my feelings or anything, I just, you know, it's kinda like, okay, well, if we're not going with, this is not the plan you want, what plan, what is the plan that somebody's got out there?
No, I mean, I don't mind to comment, I can comment for myself, I can't comment for council, obviously, right? But, I know that some of the things that, for me, are things that I'm looking for, are gonna be, in the meeting today. What do we think we can get past? All right, so that's first and foremost, because we can all work for now until 3 years from now on trying to figure out what the allocations are gonna be and everything else. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass, and it doesn't do us any good at all, right? So we gotta first figure out that. Second, figure out what our budgets are, exactly like what we talked about even, last week. You know, what do we feel like we need, and what do we feel like we need to have great parks and to be able to maintain. And then also, lastly to me is, how does that impact general fund, all right? So to me, again, just me speaking, not council at all. I don't think that the full burden of budget deficit should fall on parks. I feel like there's other places to work towards that. I think that, not to negate anything, but I don't think trying to pull parks completely out of general fund is the right answer. I don't think that there's enough revenue in A&P, even if 100% of it was allocated to parks, to completely pull parks out of general fund. And I think even if you did, you would be so tight with that budget that it wouldn't accomplish what any of us really want to accomplish. Now, could this be a tool to free up some of the funds in general funds, and then we explore other options to try to continue to make up that deficit? Then yeah, I think so, for sure. But I don't know that, I hate for you guys to tie your hands behind your own back in saying that we want A&P plus to move out of general fund. So I think Park State needs, at least a portion of it, operations or whatever it is, to stay. Where the money from A&P can be used for more than just maintenance, like for growth and for development. I think that that's kind of the key, for long term. I mean, we want long-term growth, we're looking, I get it, we gotta figure out 2023, but at the same time, we also gotta figure out 2033.
I think 23 is a long,
Well,
so pretty much.
yeah, no, it is, but 2024, we'll say, I mean, we do have to figure it out, but long-term, is the illustration there.
And just to kind of catch them up, because that's kind of what this committee did last month, was, I mean, the proposal that was taken to, the recommendation that was taken to council wasn't accidentally stumbled on, I mean,
Right.
those numbers
Y'all
came,
had a lot.
those numbers came from figuring out how to make the parks portion whole. And I know John wasn't at that meeting, so that's kind of something that was discussed through here, but also to catch everyone on this committee up from what John just said, as far as talking to Joy about not taking parks totally out of the general fund. Joy has kind of gone and said, listen, there are some other options, you know, the millage being on the table, and maybe some other options where parks would need to get out of the general fund to some extent, you know, from where we are right now, but not entirely. Just knowing what other cities do, I agree completely with what you say. I mean, getting out, the thing about getting out of the general fund is it's not there anymore to go back to if something happens. So that is a scary thought, and it does tie your hands. But if we are still in the general fund to some extent, the numbers that we did with this committee last month, there is some flexibility there. We're not quite as tied to that, has to be 2 and 3, 80%. If we're going to still have access to some general funds, you know, there could, you know, that could be, that's one of the things that could be, I guess, discussed at this point of, do we think 2 and 3 will pass? You know?
Well, what number have we figured out what number, say under 2 and 3, what number is reasonable to get us to the number that someone's safe with?
Cause there were like 3 options on that sheet, we looked at that the other night, I don't have it, but it.
As far as, the percentage that you take of each one, I mean,
If
you
X
guys.
amount is left in general funds for parks.
Yeah, to get to the goal, it is, you would have to allocate or designate pretty much all of it if you dropped anything below the 2 for restaurants. The restaurants are, I mean, and I think that's the sticky thing. I mean, everyone seems to be like hotels, that's everyone else. Go ahead and go with the maximum hotels. Even looking at a lot of, I know John's a lot of, looking at these other cities, lots of cities have 3% on hotels. I mean, and a lot of them added it right before here, you know, here recently. So that's not uncommon to see a lot of cities that say, listen, let's go ahead and do the max on hotels because that's the visitors. So, I think the question becomes the restaurants really. I mean, do we feel like 2 is too much? Do we feel like we need to try to go down? But the math is hard. I mean, it becomes a lot tighter to make the math work if you go below. I think, like you said, that the question is, what will the people support? What will the people vote for? That matter there. That half cent or will they pass 1.5? You know?
I think the proposal we made is pleased that it's generated action and some alternative thought on it. That's really the way this process needs to work.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a proposal, let's put it on the table and look at other options that, you know, we could look at. So I appreciate John's thoughts here, who clearly has a passion for the parks and wants to see us over long term. So, I don't think that, at least from my perspective, I don't think we're necessarily married to the proposal we made. It's just generated to start the process and, work together.
Yeah, I think that's what our goal was,
Exactly.
just to get the ball rolling on something, because before, we had nothing.
It obviously definitely did that, served that purpose.
Well, and I haven't asked any, in my position, I have to stay neutral on the tax stuff, yes. But I would say, the stuff we did last year on the survey, I mean, we had maybe over 1,000 people respond to our surveys. We had really good turnout at our ward meetings for, government, so I do think people are very engaged and interested in the park system. I would be real surprised if the stakeholders that are around baseball and soccer and softball and boys and girls club and senior adult centers that all benefit from this. I'd be surprised if they didn't show up and show support. The other thing is, I'm intrigued, again, this is not my decision. I am interested to see, what kind of, you take that to the people, and will they tell us parks aren't a priority, stormwater is? They might, you know, the residents of Bryant may go, hey, y'all are,
I think it depends on where you live.
it could be. But, you know, I just wonder, I think it could be a good litmus test for where we're headed and what people are thinking. And I'm in the parks world, you know, I'm in it every day, so that's all I hear about, is how many passionate people.
But this money doesn't influence wastewater, does it? Is that on the complete other side?
Yeah, no, so this is talking A and B, no, you can't continue.
But if people showed up, and if there was a, you know, people spoke at the ballot box,
Yeah.
no, we don't want an A and P for parks, it would be, I'd be surprised by that, but it would tell us that, you know, the residents of Bryant are asking their leadership to bring some other stuff.
I think the level of support and engagement that you spoke about is some indication that people are for the parks. Any political campaign, my observation has been, you got 20% gonna vote against you no matter what, 20% gonna vote for you no matter what. You gotta work on that 60%, and maybe you gotta get the vote out. And in this case, if people are engaged in using the parks, and you know they are, it's letting that core group know this is what our needs are, and this is what we need to fulfill the vision that you said you want. And I think if we make that case, we'll vote for it. Especially, you know, and get into the, you know, the messaging of the campaign and whatnot. You know, there's certain appeal to this 3% for other people. This is what we tend to do. And I've heard people talk about, you know, the possibility of having a half-cent sales tax instead of, and that kind of thing. Well, if you communicate this correctly and accurately, if you're saying we're really talking about 2% on dining, whereas if you go with the option, you got 0.5% on, sales tax, well, then you're really talking about a difference of 1.5%. But you gotta get it down to that, and people start to look at it, think about that, and say, well, yeah, I think our parks are. But it's really all about messaging and communicating and getting people engaged in it, so they understand what they're getting, not what they're thinking.
So is council wanting to see more of that plan before they make a decision? More of what the campaign's gonna look like before making a decision? I mean, would that be something that would be helpful? Let me not ask you to speak for the council, but I'm saying, would that be something that would be helpful to see exactly what that A and P tax would be used?
I think that for myself, hard for me to answer, because I don't know that I'm the right person.
Well, but like we said, you wanna see details of how is this gonna be spent?
For me, I don't think that that's an issue.
Oh, okay.
Because for me, I've seen the park master plan, I've
Right.
participated in the survey.
Right.
I've participated in the parks on a daily basis, like I'm here every
Right.
day.
Right.
So like, I'm a huge proponent for the parks, like, it could be 20%. But, I mean, I would be supportive either way. So I don't know that I'm the right person to answer that question, if that
Yeah.
helps, like, I don't.
Because you're in that 20% that's supporting it.
That's right.
Not the 20% that's against it.
That's
Well, we-
exactly
we
right.
have
Or
a-
even the 60 and
In
the
the
20.
middle.
There was a member of council that asked for what you,
Yes.
I mean, that was when
That's what I thought.
Chris presented what we currently had. I mean, the master plan will change some of this when it's finalized and out. I mean, we're currently operating on a 5-year CIP. I mean, there is a capital improvement plan. It was just based on the ability for Chris to be able to go and ask for the money. So those plans are
They're there.
out there, yes, I mean, so, and I think
They're
that,
talking about the book.
Yeah, and
They're in the book.
Yeah, it's in the budget book every year, and you guys help prioritize that, and council helps prioritize that, based on what we, like the Tennessee pickleball courts for a 2025, I think, originally, project, and they're in the 2022, right, no, 2021, during the budgeting process, council said, no, we want that to be a priority.
and same for the Midland lights.
Same for
Because like,
minimum amount, yeah.
well, like
They-
school was resurfacing tennis courts, y'all were, I mean, it was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everybody.
Midland Lights, same thing, yes, that was further down in our plan, but then it got moved up because advocacy and In fact,
And some money that they were able to come up with.
yeah, that's right, so they came up with money, and we pushed the Mills Park phase two, that was gonna be done last year, we pushed that and used that money to go to, so, yeah, it's there, but it has been prioritized not by, I mean, we've got our priority list, we kind of start that, right? We prioritize it as kind of, we see it, and then council and the parks committee says, no, let's move this one up, and let's, so we've been working that plan. But when the master plan, the strategic plan comes out, it'll be in a form that's visual,
Which would be helpful in the
not
county.
just a spreadsheet.
So Richard and I did 80% to designated the parks that we voted on.
What would we have to go to do what John was just talking about, staying?
Somewhat in the general fund, what percent would that have to be that's designated?
Good question.
Yeah, we've done some calculations. Some of it depends. I mean, if you stay at the 2 and the 3. If you stay at the 2 and the 3, you could, drop that to probably as low as 70%, maybe.
So
slightly
we were
below that.
thinking beforehand.
Yeah, maybe a little bit below that. Now, if you, and still keep with the same dollars that we talked about as far as what parks would need designated from AMP to not take a step back from where we currently are. Those numbers, I do just wanna be fully transparent on that. Those numbers did change a little bit. What we had talked about before was, 1.3 from AMP. Actually, in talking with John and Joy, it came to our attention that that was actually really 1.5 because we had gotten some previous AMP money that we were not counting because we were just counting what our operations and our general fund, or what we had asked for savings for general fund. So as we were talking with them, it was like, oh, wow, yes, but that, anything less than 1.5 would actually be a step back. But we've been calculating on that since then. But even with adding that to 1.5, with the money that Joy has said the general fund could continue to support parks with, that you could probably get down to around 70%. Now, like I said, if you adjust those percentages of what you're asking.
But the way that 70/30 is, then if there was something big, could parks go to that 30% and ask for it to the commission, correct?
Yeah, if something came up that was big, parks could go.
Right.
That just means we would be on the same footing as anyone else was.
Right,
If,
depending on what the commission wants to
Yeah.
give you.
if the historical society had something that they wanted to gather, and we're no different than them on that.
It's interesting, one of the things that we've learned in talking to other cities is that when they first start the AMP commission, working on parks, will have this designated piece, and the commission has this money. What happens is the commission there's just not enough stuff to spend the money on. So they end up going, okay, well, we're gonna give that to parks. I mean, Benton's a good example, a little bit different, but they spent the AMP on the event center, got it paid off, and now the commission themselves is saying, okay, we did that, now we're gonna do this, and that's one reason they bought it. That's the money they're buying all that land with. But basically,
It's gonna generate revenue.
yeah, I mean, if you think about Bryant, if at 70/30, the commission would have about $500,000, is that right? About $500,000 a year. I mean, it's just gonna be hard for them to spend $500,000 a year on events in Bryant, Arkansas.
And one thing, it's based on our discussion at the council workshop, I believe there was a question that was put forth in that list of questions about would the council have oversight on what the commission allocates? If I understand things correctly, the city attorney said yes. Am I correct in that understanding?
I don't wanna I talked to Joy and she said because Joy was not at that meeting, Joy being the finance director.
Right.
And so she wanted to do a little bit more looking into that. I think there were still some questions on how much control council could have over it, over that commission money. Not, now, if it were designated to parks, council would have ultimate control like they do with our budget as is, but that non-designated commission money, Joy said she wanted to look into that a little bit more. I think there are
I thought
some.
that would be up to the commission.
Yeah, so, and there are two council members on the commission,
Oh, okay.
but as far as the council as a whole, I don't know if you've learned more on that.
So, in, perfect attorneys, right? But kind of my understanding is not necessarily like line item by line item, but more so in the budgeting process. So the commission would bring a budget to council each year, they were planning to get part, this much money, this is much money, this. And then from there, council would vote to approve that budget. I would, so like, again, talked about it, lots and lots of research on AMP. Several municipalities have their budgets listed on their website, and some of them are really, really good. So that's a great tool to go look at and kind of see like some examples of do as far as not only allocations, but then also how they kind of budget those things out and like what some of the different options are as far as ways outside of parks to spend money and, you know, what there's different money and stuff like that.
And even in Hot Springs, I mean, Majestic Park is not parks. Majestic Park is paid for by the AMP commission that is running a baseball complex outside of parks. I don't know that we would suggest that, but that's just an example of how different places, yeah, I mean, the more you look at it, the more I discover that, man, there's a lot of different options.
Yeah, I can't speak for the questioner who posed that question on that list, but I suspect in the back of their mind was our last go-round.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
And that, you know, that's caused some problems and some issues, and I think there was an interest in retaining some just oversight.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I can't speak for that person, but I inferred from that question that that's probably what Tom.
I was trying to remember, I know the mayor said something, someone else said something about a special election in the event that we weren't able to get it on the ballot, what was it?
Well, it would have to be a special election this year. There are.
Oh, it has to still be this year.
This year. It could, the option was September, which, I mean, this would have to be really rushed to do September. So November probably more likely. But
Also.
this is not an election year, so it would have to be a special election.
They changed the law recently as far as like the special elections involved, yeah, so that's.
I was thinking more next year anyway, so.
Yeah, and it could be.
I meant before, well, like that's not an election.
So was the council will.
Actually, I'll send
Or
an
the-
email, I'll send
or the
an email
mayor?
to the council and mayor and say, hey, when's the next workshop?
Okay.
If they could bullet out some of the objectives that we wanna accomplish, get that out, and we'll see when the mayor pushes.
When's the next council meeting, 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks.
Yeah, correct, yeah,
Yeah.
2 weeks today. This is 3 weeks, or 4 weeks today, this is 30th.
Is it the 30th? This is the week before. 30th is
Memorial, that's Memorial Day, yeah, I think we just pushed it up a week.
I have one more question, then we'll move on from this. If we go to leave it in general fund, looking at the big picture for the whole city, what does that free up for the whole deficit that we're in? Does anybody know that?
So I asked Joy, I guess this was probably, we talked Thursday, so Thursday or Friday, when that was discussed, I asked Joy, how much do you need from parks to be out of the general fund to balance budget? Now, big part of that's millage.
Right.
She said if they match Benton's millage and council passed the millage increase, then, and parks could get under $400,000 in the general fund for operations, that would be, we would no longer, our main capital profits would not be going to the savings. So if we could get under $400,000 a year in operations, that would, in her mind, balance the at least going into 2024. You know, that may change, we may see 2025, we need to back out a little bit more, but at least for 2024, that's where she was. So that's where, I mean, by telling you that roughly we could get down to 70%, you know, that would be based on us being under $400,000 in the general. Whereas this past year, we were roughly 700 for operations, and then another 700 roughly for capital as well, so, yeah, 750, yeah, so close.
What about $1 million?
No, it was,
Difference?
oh,
We're
yeah,
still in
yeah,
there for-
yeah,
We're still in there for 400,000, we're looking.
yeah,
at-
yeah.
You're looking at $1 million.
Yeah, we're looking at getting out a little over $1 million for operations and capital.
All right, new business, the Barracudas.
Barracudas,
Oh, you're almost done.
all good, nothing really changed.
Yeah, there is some highlights, that would be the, I don't have it in front of me.
The,
Is it printing color?
no.
It didn't, okay. Well, it wasn't attached, yeah, it wasn't
That
attached.
works, that works
Yeah.
well.
That's a school district comment.
Yeah.
Taxpayer money, gotta be frugal.
Chris's should have in color. Chris,
Oh.
the only
I got a bunch of
changes,
color copies on it.
if I remember right, the only changes were the participants must exit immediately after practice. My assumption is, Kristen would have to answer this for sure, my assumption is there's probably some issues with kids hanging around after practice is over and not having supervision, so, but this has already, as you can see, this has already been agreed on with the Barracudas and signed, so,
They're happy.
yeah, so they're fine with it. I think the only other thing was added was, number 20, that, Barracudas may run concessions. We've been operating under that for a couple of years now. I just don't think it was in the agreement, to allow them to run concessions. They actually run the concessions for all swim meets now as a fundraiser. I can tell you from the years of us doing it, we were losing money just by paying someone to be in there. So allowing them to do it as a fundraiser also works for us, just because it is, I mean, we do this a lot of concessions. It's hard for us to turn a profit on concessions. We don't have free parent labor like a lot of the other groups do, or the schools. So, but yeah, so we've been allowing them to do that for a couple of years now. We just wanted to make sure and put it in the agreement.
Hey, I got a question.
When is the Boys and Girls Club, the aquatic center for the grant, for the,
When it's in the summer.
They do.
Summer, is they gonna interfere with, so we're good on the
Yeah,
dates?
and the Boys and Girls Club programming is the same it's always been. The grant is just going to, last year, it's always been free swim for the Boys and Girls Club. Last year is whenever, you know, Kristen had the idea, like, during this time, let's do some swim lessons and teach these kids.
Now, that's at Mills Park.
And it's in both.
Oh, it does.
Right, but it's not gonna interfere with any of this scheduling. Okay.
I'm sorry. The pool pack situation, if it goes out, how does that affect the availability of the aquatic center for,
Any of this,
for what?
I mean, the aquatic center's down, so yeah, it would affect a lot of people.
Well, are we committing to providing them a facility? We need to have some provision in there
Yeah, that's my next question.
as long as the aquatic facility is able to be up and running, especially given this, you know, if we go down any time, I don't wanna be in a situation where they say, well, what are we supposed to do? And it may just be putting some sort of a stipulation in there that
let's see why,
they can't get
Yeah.
out.
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know, you know, I don't know if that's any different than, with the year that it flooded and, you know, we didn't have any baseball or softball fields that year. I mean, it was just one of those things that, you know, something happened and the facility was no longer available.
So was that before it signups and everything when y'all determined that?
Oh, that was mid-season. I mean, I remember that year that, I don't, everybody just kinda had to adjust, but, because we only got 3 of those fields back up operational that year, so.
This is like, we're not handy at picking.
I just
Yeah.
wonder why
Yeah.
we wouldn't put in some sort of a effective paragraph. I mean, are they, I assume the Barracudas are fully aware of the tenuous situation.
Yeah, do they know?
I mean, I,
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Be a sales attorney.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be noted somewhere in here to
As long
cover.
as the parents
Yeah.
vote yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point, I mean,
they're not aware of it now, and so, well, your contract is to provide us with a clock. What do you do that?
Right.
Well, especially if
Cody,
you
do
look
you
at.
know if in the summer, could the route just be opened and we could limp along if it went down in a short term?
Well, you better not go long.
But I mean, because we say the aquatic facility
But
would be.
can we open the roof now, though?
I mean, it'll be hot, but,
Right.
and if it rains, it'll rain in there, but, you know. I mean, yeah. So, but I mean, that's we say that if it goes down, I mean, we may be, it's technically.
It's pouring down rain in there if it goes down.
So, but no, that's a good, I mean,
Good point. We'll talk, we'll ask Ashley about that.
And I don't know what the language is, but there ought to be something in there that covers that.
yeah.
It seems to me like that's kind of a potentially gaping hole, if somebody wanted to make use of it.
I think it'd help in the long run too.
Did get the word out that it needs to be replaced?
We will,
There's a chance.
we'll work with Ashley to add something before it goes to council, but we need to take this to council with assessments.
With an amendment, well, again, I don't know what the language is.
I understand.
Ready to make a motion to approve this with,
Well, hang on, because you've got, look at 24D, the department will attempt to repair damage to facilities in a timely manner according to the repairs needed.
So timely manner, if it takes a year.
Yeah, well, I truly believe, and I'm not an attorney, but I do think Ashley's gonna say we are covered in this.
That's why.
But I don't think,
Yeah.
I'm more concerned with in good faith of letting them know. I mean, I think that, you know, Richard asked the question, are they aware that this could happen? I mean, I do think we need to make sure and do
But
in
as
good
far
faith
as the
let them know.
contract, to go ahead and approve
Yeah.
them to use it as, I mean, starting.
Ultimately, what prevails is what's in writing.
But it says, and it will attempt to repair damage to facilities in a timely manner according
Define
to the
timely
repairs.
manner.
Well,
I
we
mean,
need
that's
to get the
subject
part.
to, I mean, I would think that timely manner would fall within the length of the contract if I'm them. I'm just saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with adding something to, given the tenuous situation to have. I don't know why we wouldn't add something like that.
I think the big thing is, what you're saying though, is to let them know these are some.
Yeah, we don't wanna try to do something.
Right. And I will put some language in there and then still not say anything to them, and then all of a sudden, them, cause I mean, that's not fair to them.
And they're here every day, we can get them to we can adjust one, amend it and get it re-signed.
We'll get with Ashley and,
Yeah. And she may say we covered with that, with the language that's in there.
There's one issue, Ashley is on vacation.
Yeah.
We'll be back on next week.
Yeah. So I don't know how quick you're gonna get.
Well, I think we can pass, that's
Put it like this,
and then we just
put, what's it,
amendment or something that it needs to be updated to let the citizens know that
right, yes.
there's potential for this.
I guess make it
Does that work?
to absolve ourselves of any potential liability. I agree with you, it's probably not gonna happen, but I don't see any reason not to have it.
Approve pending, conversation with Barracudas so they know the condition of the full pack. So that would be, we think covered in these minutes, that we're not gonna take the council if they're not gonna be. Like, no.
Well, you may want, but also what it's saying is have Ashley review.
Yeah, we're gonna do that too. We'll let them know.
When were they looking at starting to use it? Immediately?
Oh, yeah, this
I
week.
May 30th.
I know it says a year. Okay.
Between May 30th.
I put it down here.
Already have a motion.
To approve, any conversation with Barracudas and city attorney.
Motion to approve with conversations with Barracuda. The city attorney, actually.
Okay, second.
Okay.
The second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same.
All right.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.